another DISBAND member. So in 2016, DISBAND was granted a month-long residency at the McDowell Foundation, McDowell Colony, in order to collaborate on new songs and new material. We were supposed to leave on Monday. Diane flew in on Friday, stayed with a friend in Brooklyn so that we can all drive up together. And while she was staying there, she was felled by a series of seizures and rushed to the hospital, and she spent about 10 days in the hospital, but she spent that first weekend in a coma in intensive care. Illona went on to McDowell as planned, and Martha and I stayed in order to support and help Diane in any way we possibly could. We went to the emergency room to see her, and we were there just very briefly, and she opened her eyes for the first time. She was very confused, and the next 2 weeks were really intense, and I think that probably many of you here knew that and were involved. Martina flew in, of course, as soon as she possibly could. Other people gathered, friends gathered. She had surgery. They took a part of her skull off and then stapled it back on. And she recuperated for a while at Vince's place, thanks to Vince. So finally, after nearly 2 weeks, the doctors decided that the remaining 2 weeks that were open to us at McDowell, would be good for Diane to go to the country and be fed very well and taken care of. So the three of us, Martha, Diane, and I, drove up to McDowell. So our first meeting of the four of us, I just want to make sure I get all this straight here. So the first meeting where we all met together again, Diane insisted that our project should be writing a graphic novel. Excuse me? What? We had all come very eager with bits and pieces of songs and chants that we were going to develop together. And no, Diane insisted, and I think you all know that Diane knew how to insist very vehemently that we must write a graphic novel. None of the three of us were into that at all. But Diane maintained her stand and insisted, and at that point I realized that the last 2 weeks had really brought her very close to understanding that she was a mortal being and that she wanted her story to be told, and she wanted her story to go into the record, as it were. So we did. We started to work on this, and it set off 2 weeks of psychodrama as we all look back at our past and we're thinking about our stories, and we decided that the theme that we all would follow would be from trauma to triumph. So I would like to share with you Diane's story in her own words of her journey from trauma to triumph. So, it's dinner time and Dad is drunk again. I'm 13 years old, the youngest of 3 kids. We live in Aberdeen, northeast Scotland, but Donald, who's 15 months older than me and my closest brother, is not present because he's persuaded my mother to let him attend drama school in London. Mom puts the food on the table. The dinner includes a dish made with tinned tomatoes, as the sauce. My other brother and I are standing by our chairs waiting to sit down. Mom is still in the kitchen fixing something. We can sense Dad's mood, so we don't say anything. and nobody is allowed to start eating until we're all seated. So we just stood there feeling nervous. Then Dad goes to the bathroom. When he returns, he's furious that Mom is still not in the dining room and the food is now tepid. He picks up the dish with the tomato sauce and hurls it across the beige flocked wallpaper, leaving a horrible stain. The dish itself goes through a hatch between the dining room and kitchen, destroying Mom's best china set that she had placed there. Dad runs into the kitchen, picks up Mom, throws her on the stone floor like a sack of flour. Blood is coming out of her head. I think she's dead. I jump on his back, punching and yelling, "You've killed her." My older brother David doesn't know what to do, so he's giggling in the corner. Trauma.
Poor Diane.
Okay, and then this middle section that we all wrote was kind of our transformative aha moment, where we first confronted the real us and who we might become. This is really long, so I'm not going to read the entire central part, but it starts like this. It's called Diane's Moment of Agency. At the age of 16, well, actually, to backtrack, she did run away from home, lived for a while on the streets of London. Then at the age of 16, I was removed from the remand home in Kent, where I'd been held for 3 months. As a runaway who had broken the terms of her probation, I was considered to be a juvenile delinquent. My punishment was to spend 3 years in approved school, which is the UK name for a reform school. As a quote favor, my probation officer drove me herself to the approved school, the Crescent Training School for Girls in Bristol. This was a 250-mile journey from the southeast to the west of England. It was an icy day and I was full of dread. I remember longing for the anonymity of a police van instead of being in her car, because her lecturing me was, "I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed." Once installed in the Crescent School, I took a class in English, math, and gardening. I was invited to get a training in one of the following: domestic help, a factory worker, a shop assistant, a gardener, or a typist. I said I wasn't interested in any of those, thank you very much. And she insisted that she be allowed to take academic subjects, in which she excelled. And she proved her scholastic ability and superiority, and she insisted and fought her way into being allowed to take her O-level exams, which she aced. And that led the way for her to be able to continue at Bristol College for further education. And the big part here that she was really proud of was not only did she win the right to go on to academic studies, but she set a precedent. So from then on, other girls were also allowed.
Yay, Diane. Oh, Diane.
All right. And so this is the last part, the triumph part, which she calls Transcendence of Fear Through Art and Humor. I've been teaching workshops where women transformed into men since 1989. These are workshops which I began by calling Drag King workshops. But as the phrase drag king became adopted by women who just wanted to strap down their breasts, pack a fake penis, and put on male facial hair and clothes, I changed the name to Man for a Day. I was interested in women having the empowerment and privilege that men have, to create a male persona they could investigate, who had depth and who could possibly pass. Before Mayor Giuliani tore out the sex club culture in downtown Manhattan, there were several lap clubs and go-go bars. One
Diane.
called Angels on White Street in Tribeca was owned by a woman who I knew and who liked the idea that women as men could pass in her club. That Saturday night, everyone in the Man for a Day workshop was excited to be going to Angels. This was the ultimate test. However, when we arrived, we found that the only seats that were available were in the bright light next to the small stage where the go-go dancer was doing her thing. We were not happy to be in close-up scrutiny of the waitresses and other clients and worried that we would be exposed. However, after the dancer had finished her set, we found that we need not have had any fear. A cocktail waitress wearing high-stacked shoes slowly bent her long legs so her face was at the same level as ours, and she said slowly, "Do you speak English?" By our ill-fitting and out-of-style suits and jackets and ugly shoes, she assumed that we were tourists. At which point we realized that we really did, in fact, pass. We just had to speak in an Eastern European accent. Our persona had been defined for us. We then proceeded to drink lots of vodka and have a sexy night flirting with the dancers, inventing Eastern European male body gestures, and pretending to speak Bulgarian. I'm going to do a striptease.